Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's continued meeting of May 28th, 2025. This meeting has been continued from yesterday. There is a motion and a second, and this meeting has been continued. If I may, before taking roll, provide, well, actually, we did hear public speakers yesterday. The last time to submit speaker cards for this meeting was yesterday by 10:30 a.m. I will now proceed with taking roll of council members present. On roll, council members Brown.
Present.
Fife. Excused? Okay, thank you. Gallo.
Present.
Jenkins.
Present.
Houston.
Present.
Unger. Okay, excused. Wong.
You got it.
And Chair Ramachandran.
Present.
Thank you. Showing 6 members present, 2 excused, Fife and Unger. Madam Chair, do you have any announcements?
Just very briefly, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our budget study session. Thank you to all of my council colleagues for staying focused through a number of presentations. Thank you to the city administrator for organizing efficient and informative series of presentations, both yesterday and today. Very excited to finish up the presentations, get our questions answered, and then get to work on exploring possible amendments from council. I will pass it to my co-chair. Thank you to co-chair Brown for leading this process together. We will, like yesterday, alternate chairing this meeting. And public comment and open forum were both heard yesterday. So in today's agenda, we will only be hearing presentations from departments, as well as comments and questions from the council. I respectfully ask council members to keep their questions or comments focused on the budget and any implications for the budget. And we can call in our first speaker, which is the Budget Advisory Commission. Thank you for being here today. We'll have 20 minutes for majority time presentation and hopefully a little bit time for questions.
Awesome, thank you for having us. We'll just jump right into it. Do you have our slides and will they go up? My name is Mike Forbes, this is Mike Petahoff. We're here representing the Budget Advisory Commission. Special thanks to Ben Gold, who did a ton of the heavy lifting on what you're about to see. He couldn't make it today. We're just gonna jump right in because we've got a lot to talk about. We've got 4 items on the agenda for today. First, we wanted to give some overall thoughts on the budget and start with a bit of a report card, which we hope is a recurring thing. We'll talk about some specific budget and policy recommendations. Then we wanna step back and talk big picture on how we get out of the broader structural deficit we're in. And then we're gonna make sure we leave time for your questions. We promised last time we were here that we were gonna give a nutrition facts type panel on the budget. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but this is an idea of a report card. And this is our overall take on the budget. And I think first of all, we wanna start by saying, really especially with the letter, and thank you to interim Mayor Jenkins and current Mayor Lee. It was just a much more refreshing and honest approach, and that was our initial take versus the budget we saw last time. So it's great collaboration between city finance team and the mayor's office on this. It just felt like we were really talking about the issues openly for the first time. On the left here on this table, we're gonna talk about the 5 things the back looks for a budget. We gave a little bit of a grade and some comments. And so I'll be, again, quick on this for time. What we were really enthused about here is for the first time in a while, we're not using one-time funds to balance the budget. That's a big step forward from last year. We're also focusing on community priorities. And in particular, one of the things that BAC noted earlier this year was how important safety was. And we see that definitely being addressed and focusing on core services. So thank you for that. We're also pleased to see that equity considerations are more upfront in every section of the budget. A couple areas we do want to keep talking about, and we'll talk more about them in this presentation. One, number 1 priority of the city needs to be just making sure we're meeting requirements of the voter-approved measures. That's not happening yet. And 2, we want to make sure we're taking a more balanced approach, not only looking internally at Oakland, but outwards at other cities to see what we can learn from other cities with the same situation. And we don't quite see that yet as we look through the budget, so that's something we're going to be looking for in the future. Moving on, to biennial policy budget recommendations. This is a quick summary. We've got 4 budget actions we want to talk about specifically, and 2 other policy actions that my colleague Mike is going to talk about next. In terms of budgeting, 1, making sure we have a contingency plan, right? Because we know there's a lot of things that can go sideways on any budget. 2, prioritizing voter-approved measures, making sure those are funded, especially since we're going to go back and ask for another tax in this budget. 3, really looking hard at grant funding to free up GPF dollars where we can. And 4, understanding staffing levels and classifications. Let's talk about a contingency plan first. And this chart on the left shows at the beginning of a fiscal year what we thought we would bring in revenue-wise, and then the orange is what we actually are bringing in, or in the case of this year, what we think we're going to bring in. And what we see, and this is not uncommon, so this is not meant to be a shot at the finance department, just to be super clear, like, you make a plan and it's not always right. And on average, over the past 5 years, we've been off on revenue by about 7% a year. And so all we're saying is, let's make sure we go into the year understanding what we would do if that happens again and revenue 7% short. And given the macroeconomic environment, that could easily happen. So on the right, we talk about a couple of things that we think are risky assumptions. One of them is just, there's a $40 million parcel tax that's yet to be approved. And the second, when we think about new construction, we're sort of assuming a bit of an average of the past, which at one level makes sense, but when you just look around downtown, there aren't a lot of new apartment buildings in the pipeline. So these are a couple of spots where things could fall a little short, and let's just be ready and have a plan in case that happens. Second, let's talk about voter-approved measures. And we just think this is so important because we know we're going to need more revenue solutions to get out of our structural deficit, and we don't want to be in a situation where voters start saying, but wait a minute, you know, my Measure C money isn't really going to what I thought it was going to, so why would I approve another tax? So it's going to be really important to make sure we can say these are fully funded. I'm going to point out a couple in particular, but if you go to our memo that we sent out earlier, there's some really detailed recommendations for each of these. First of all, the city auditor. It's just a relatively simple one in Measure X to fill in terms of dollars. There's, depending on how you look at the numbers, about 2 to 4 FTEs, 2 to 5 FTEs that we need there to fulfill Measure X. And I think it would be great to just make that one happen, especially since people are looking for more transparency and accountability. The others around Measure N, public safety. And I would just encourage the city, the backwood, to really just think about public safety as an all-hands-on-deck moment of how we can improve this, and anything else we can do to think creatively about accelerating academies or what have you to get closer to that 700 number, the better off we're going to be. 3 is around accountability for grant and contract funding. And again, in the memo we sent earlier, there's a very specific list that you can link to of what we noticed when we went through the line item detail on the budget. There's a whole bunch of grants that have $1 for it, but it's this TBD in terms of how much money, or who it's, actually not how much money, but who it's to. And that just makes it a lot harder in terms of, again, transparency and accountability to know what you're getting when you're setting aside money for TBD. And so I would look through this carefully, and I think you're going to be able to find money here to fund other things, because $60 million is a lot in TBD. 4, let's make sure we're looking at FTE positions around the city in each department to make sure we're staffing appropriately. And I'm going to give a couple of examples. One is in the mayor's office. One of the things we noticed when we looked at staffing classifications is in this year's budget, it's budgeted for 11. I think as of April 8th, we had 8 folks there, and it was mixed across pay classifications. And this is important because these classifications go from 90K to 250K. What you see in this year's budget going forward is this has been rescoped for 12 FTEs instead of 8 to 11, and all of them are scoped at the highest level. So that's 150 to 250K. And I think this is important for a couple of reasons. One, there's just a huge optics issue. If you're asking the city to do, if you're asking so many other departments to do more with less or more with the same, this is a pretty big change for the mayor's office. And there's just, yeah, it speaks for itself. So it's something I would look at, and if you just reclassify these appropriately, you could actually fill a lot of those city auditors' positions that we were talking about and then get closer to satisfying a measure requirement. I'd also want to point out, something you can do with those dollars is, if you look at OPD, I think it's great, and we think it's great as a BAC that we're increasing staffing levels, sworn officers. But one of the things you see from 24 to 25 going forward is we've cut a lot of positions, the non-sworn positions. And when we think about in a city where most homicides are not solved in any given year, some of those positions that were frozen are the fingerprint analysts, the evidence collectors, all of those folks that make sure a crime is really solved. So anything we can do to restore that is really, really helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. I'm Mike Petoff. I chaired this ad hoc, and Mike Forbes is actually the vice chair of the overall Budget Advisory Committee. Our recommendation number 5 is to implement stronger overtime controls now to present mid-cycle overruns. Our thought process in including this here was that this is not just allocation of numbers, but it's a policy budget, so the council can allocate or can create accountability measures, performance standards, and we think that that would be good as part of the policy. One question sometimes comes up, are we doing enough overtime? The auditor's report, and we've collaborated with the auditor on this, shows that in the last 16 of 18 years, we've had overruns regardless of the approved or actual staffing levels. And in the audit report, 13 of 21 audit findings are still to remain. This is typically the largest overrun at mid-year review, so we think the recommendations are important to implement policy now so we don't have them as a fait accompli when it comes up in mid-cycle. Some of the recommendations have to do with segmenting different types of overtime, looking at some IT improvements, which we'll talk about more later, that will help to account for this, and really looking at shift extensions, which account for the greatest increase in the last 5 years. Is that shift extension approved by a supervisor? Much more to say on this, but that's something we recommend taking a policy action now. Another item is looking at the county Measure W funds for the unhoused. The unhoused is an issue that is very important to the city, and certainly the BAC has discussed a lot about dealing with the unhoused with compassion, but also many others view, businesses and others say that, hey, a homeless on my doorsteps is not that great for business. So we want to look at both sides of that. The important thing is, even though this is a county issue, the city can benefit from that.
Madam Chairperson, we don't have the slides available. I mean, I have a report, but not these slides. Is there any way that we can get the slides copied so we can follow the report?
Yes, to the Advisory Commission, would you be able to send the presentation via email to council members?
We can, and we sent it to staff, but we can forward that to council members as well.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't have it. I mean, I
Is
just
it on
have a
the-
previous report, but not the slides.
The important issue here is, as we're finalizing our budget, so is the county finalizing theirs. The standard protocol for the county is to allocate by population. Oakland is 25% of the county's population, but 58% of the unhoused. So we could argue for that larger share, and it's important to do that now when the allocations are set. This fund was passed several years ago, yet it was held up by litigation, so over $500 million has accumulated. This is the first year it'll be implemented, so we want to establish those procedures up front. Oakland stands to benefit from the county's expenditure by less money that we'll spend on the unhoused, asking for reimbursement for the money we do spend. That could be PWA, the Public Works Agency, Police Department, and even macro, we could ask for reimbursement from the county, and increased revenue as those that are unhoused become part of society and pay taxes.
I apologize, just 1 second to clarify. The presentation is not in the packet, so we can follow along through the screen for now. And right after the meeting, the Advisory Commission will email the presentation to all of us. Or if
I want
the
it now.
administrator has it.
We're working on,
Okay, in the next couple of minutes, they will be emailed and printed for us.
And I'm okay with an email, thank you.
So we've outlined some of the asks that we suggest, and this would be something where, especially with our new mayor being highly visible, may have some weight with the county, but we think that the city can be a financial beneficiary of the county's expenditure and put less burden on our job. We've done an extensive look into this. There's 4 examples, having return of investment ranging from 500 to 1,000% where we could benefit. Job support for the unhoused, mobile shower units, family reunification, and medical assistance are amongst the many that we've looked at. Because it's a new program, they may be looking for implementation ideas, and we can come ready with those. So the next part is we understand there's a roadmap to fiscal health, so we have some recommendations for that, including the last recommendation about Measure W. So despite the changes, we have significant deficits projected for the years ahead. So we need to take a look at three things: doing economic development, leveraging IT improvement, and looking at the growing retirement benefits liability. So let's talk about economic growth. It's really important we have an economic development action plan led by Director Connaught, and we are partnering with them to do that. We need to be careful as we allocate funds that we're not eating our own seed corn. As we take away money here, that can reduce our revenues in the future. So imagine we're going into the winter, we only have so much seed. Do we eat it, or do we save something to plant for next spring? And if you look at the numbers, we've gone from fiscal 23, 62 million, down to proposed budget of 24 million, over a 60% cut in that time period. So we think this is important to get jobs for Oaklanders, to bring businesses in, and what's being envisioned is an all-hands-on-deck approach that includes the unhoused, includes blight, includes getting our roads paved, includes all the things that make the city attractive to businesses, but also to residents. So these are some examples of things we can do now that don't necessarily have the pain of having a lot of extra cost. Certainly we see businesses need to feel safe to come to Oakland. 911 is an important issue. We've discovered, thanks to Councilmember Giannani's work on this and others, that the main issue isn't lack of funds, it's that we had a lot of applications and they weren't being pursued. So people were complaining their application never got reviewed, and they're complaining we don't have enough staff. So we recommend at least quarterly follow-up with public safety to find out what's the hiring status and what's the performance of the 911 center. That can be a big leap without a lot of new expenditure. We also think that dumping and blight hurts our reputation as a city and makes people not want to come here. We have in dumping enforcement about 11% collections. We've talked to the Director of Public Works, and they feel this would be an area for improvement. They encourage this recommendation. Why not really enforce those things and create a waste management system, so if a contractor does a remodel and has debris that you're paying to go to the dump, that it really goes to the dump. And we may want to work with surrounding cities so they don't dump it in our area as well. There's also paving, getting the roads paved. Certainly we're recommending that positions that are not general purpose fund funded, that are grant funded, be not freezed, but specifically requiring a financial deposit for those trenching in the public right-of-way. City of Emeryville, City of Fremont, most cities do this. So you can't tear up the pavement for putting in cable or whatever it might be without putting a financial deposit to make sure that's fixed. That makes our finite paving dollars go much further. Again, it doesn't cost a lot of money, it's administrative procedure. All these things are doable without a lot of new budget allocations. Other recommendations include macro, which is a huge issue, but the biggest thing we say is that, and we've discussed this in back even previous to the mayor's recommendation, that the current dispatch procedures don't allow macro to go to residential addresses. So if every dispatch was successful, it's less than 1% of OPD's overall dispatch. They're situated in the fire department rather than police, and we see that the police department doesn't really own this, so the dispatch protocols are one of many areas to look at. And this could be, since they're serving a lot of homeless, unhoused needs, maybe we ask for Measure W fund to help reimburse at least a portion of that. Public safety ambassadors, that's in the budget, we support that. We also observe that if we get to the numbers where Measure NN funding is available, they're specifically named in Measure NN to be funded there. So there could be some budget relief to put them. But we certainly think that there's a nexus between public safety and economic development. If business owners and their employees don't feel safe, if customers don't feel safe going out to dinner, they can't be successful. So we think public safety and economic development support each other, and there's a nexus between them. Also, ambulance services. There's a potential for consolidation of work between the city and the county, and this is important not just for saving funds, but to create revenue. Many cities have done this to great advantage. Right now, over 80% of the fire department's calls are non-fire medical emergencies, over 80%. What typically happens is the fire department comes, does the first response, and an ambulance company, private company hired by the county, comes and takes them to the hospital. The entity that takes them to the hospital gets significant revenue, which we're missing, even though we're showing up. So this is something that could be very advantageous for revenue generation. There's some legislation that was passed in the 80s that makes this harder, and there could be both a legislative and procedural fix. We work with Councilmember Unger on this. There are solutions in works, but if we've had folks head to Washington for looking at legislation, why not head to Sacramento as well to look at this issue? So it's, many cities have done this, have had better service, opened up fire stations because of that revenue. So we think that's something to look at for the long term. And in general, in economic development and public safety, all these things being looked at together, we want success, not closure. And some examples are, City of Emerald just had a $1 billion expansion. Imagine there's an economic development person who worked for years making that to happen. Our economic development people have to worry if they're going to be laid off next week. Just up the road, we have Oakland, our largest hotel. The Marriott is filing for bankruptcy. So we want the success. We want to not eat our seed corn, but to plant new seeds of growth. Because if we have top-line revenue, we can do all the things that we need to do better, including paying our police officers more. So sometimes we need to be disciplined in the short term to grow in the long term. I'll pass it back to Mike on this one. Sure. Yeah.
We'll just talk a little bit about IT quickly, and I know IT is never something where there's a lot of people lobbying for IT spending, but one of the things I hear working across the city, and one of the great parts of the back is we got to meet a lot of folks, and everyone is frustrated with the availability of timely, accurate information. And I know it's even hard for the finance team to pull things. And this is one of these, if you look at our budget, and this includes non-GPF funds, right? We're in the midst of an AI boom. We live in the center of technical innovation, and our budget has been flat here the last 4 years. And one of the things we're starting to do as a BAC is actually look at what staffing levels look like in other cities. And I know this is a big apples to oranges thing. It's never perfect to look at other cities, but you can see in the chart on the right, in some cases we have less than half the staff in IT of similar sized cities. And I even know of some functions off the record who would say they hire IT staff because they need something that they can't get from core IT. So this is something, before we spend, we really need to look at a strategy, look at our ERP systems, look at all of these non-sexy things. But if you do it right, this is gonna be the lifeblood that makes everything fund and work a lot more smoothly. So it's really, really important to look at, just like as a human, you go and work out, and then everything else works better. Like IT is sort of that for a city.
Thank you, Mike. So another area we need to look at for the long-term path to fiscal health is retirement benefit cost. This is a topic that could take the entire time, so we'll be brief on it. But what we want to show is that our unfunded actuarial liability is growing as a percentage of overall budget, and we need to be able to look at that. These costs, some are exogenous external factors like healthcare costs that are going up, but we really need to look at these very carefully. We have some detailed recommendations, but we won't go into that now. But we think this is an important area to watch because that will create structural deficits if these costs grow and are not managed. Certainly we want to honor all the retirement benefits we've made, but are there ways to do that more cost effectively? Last thing we'd like to say is on the roadmap to fiscal health, we understand that the council is making some progress, and as they deliberate on these issues, we'll make more progress on a balanced budget. But we also understand some of these issues are long-term and will take time. So we're continue working on these things, and we're honored to have been divided by staff to participate in the mayor's medium-term and long-term roadmap to fiscal health. We think some of these things won't be completely solved, but we were willing to work on this, especially some of the pension liability. Instead of going into detailed recommendations, we are happy to work on these things for the long term and really look at the long-term revitalization of Oakland and looking at not just costs, but also our revenue and seeing where we can grow and make it a better place for the residents, but also a better place for businesses to come in and bring jobs, a positive reinforcing cycle. So thank you. I think we are open for questions and discussion.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for all the work that you put into this, just for the public's sake. The Budget Advisory Commission are volunteer members who dedicate their time and energy to try to help us with an outside perspective on how to get our city's budget and fiscal health back on track. So I very much appreciate your efforts and analysis and your initial comment that this is a much more refreshing and honest approach than last year. I'm grateful to hear that and thank our former interim mayor and city administrator for for putting something together that allows the advisory commission to be able to put those words on, and that's no small feat, so thank you. I will open it to questions. Council President, then Councilmember Wong.
So more of just two comments. I think that was an excellent presentation with some good, thorough ideas that we can implement as a council. And then I just want to go on record around the increase in the mayor's budget. So I know there's a trust deficit in the city when it comes to the mayor's office. It's imperative that whoever the new mayor was needed to have high-functioning staff to erase that trust deficit, and that's why I personally increased the budget of the mayor's office. I think some of you guys know, sorry, Noel, some of you guys know I was gonna count. You wanna go, Noel? Do you wanna go? Okay. So some of you guys know, like, I was gonna cut council staff down, but it's just imperative that we have a high-functioning mayor's office and we have trust within the city.
Thank you, I appreciate the comments. Councilmember Wong, then Councilmember Gallo, then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really impressed with this presentation. Clearly, we have a really excellent Budget Advisory Commission. I guess I wanted to follow up on two recommendations that were made. You said something about identifying more grant funding. Have you all done any research on specific grants that we could pursue that would free up those opportunities, and if so, would love that list. Yeah.
Yeah, there may be a wide range of grants, but probably the biggest outside source of funding is this Measure W. And that has been pent up by legislation for years. $500 million is accumulated, so there's a real need to start it up on the right foot. And the allocations, whether we get 25% or 58%, are super important. So that's not exactly grant, but it's outside funds that we want to come to Oakland to lessen our burden, but support the unhoused in a humane way, but also have economic benefit as we have less cost for supporting the unhoused and get revenue as they get gainful employment and pay taxes.
Gotcha.
And just building on that, one of the things that's in the memo, there's a link, and if not, we can provide that. I believe we have an actual database. We have a spreadsheet that lays out some things where there's a lot of TBDs here, and there's a lot more questions than answers in terms of where that money's going. And I know some of that has already been addressed actually through this process, but we can make sure you have that and can look at that.
Okay, and if you have any recommendations for where the city can look at a database of grants that are available, would welcome that. And then the second thing I would just want to comment on is, or question actually on, is the recommendation to, I think, consolidate the county emergency as well as our OFD. And can you elaborate more on what that looks like?
Yes, and Councilmember Unger, who's not here today, is knowledgeable of that. Obviously, you know, he has association with the fire union. This is something that we think is very advantageous. Other cities that have done it have great improvement in service because you have a single entity that's helping, and then also great financial revenue benefits. There was legislation passed in the 80s, lobbied for, not surprisingly, by for-profit ambulance companies for the very reason that there is a lot of money to be made. So while the fire department is a legitimate expense line item, and we need that safety, they could also be a revenue generator, and other cities are having that. City of Berkeley, for example, has had positive experience both financially and with service to do that. So it's getting around that legislative issue. Maybe with enough lobbying, we go to Sacramento and change that legislation. That's one. Or there's also some procedural workarounds that are probably beyond the time we have here that can be done. But the point is that we want to work with the county, and I would say, in this case, the union is strongly in favor of it.
Really?
The residents of Oakland would be great beneficiaries in terms of service, and the budget would be improved. One equity issue is that for-profit ambulance companies, because there's money to be made, tend to hang out in neighborhoods where people have more generous health plans. You actually bill your health plan. So if you have good health benefits, you might pay more for an ambulance run than somebody who has less. So there's an equity issue also of a public agency providing the service as well as financial benefits. So it's something that we want to focus on, say maybe we need legislative effort, but there's also some delicate issues that need to happen as well. So we've talked with Councilmember Unger a number of times, and we think this is a positive thing, and it won't happen in a month. It may happen in another budget cycle, but we think it's important to keep focused on that because there's sizable benefits, not a few million, very sizable benefits that would come from this. That would be a long way to closing the long-term budget gap.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Gallo.
Thank you for the information, and certainly throughout the years, we have welcomed your presentation, and certainly, You know, some of us may have a difference, but in terms of, you've been at this for a number of years and certainly understand the budget. So the question that I have for is a direct question. So the numbers that you're providing are based on, not on one-time revenue, but an ongoing revenue that the city has currently. Is that the numbers you're giving me? Because one-time revenue does not apply to the ongoing expenditures that the city needs to maintain its staffing and other
When
issues.
you see, it's a great question.
Yeah.
When you see this presentation, and I think copies are being made, you will see on the bottom of everything literally a source link to exactly where we got that information. And in almost all cases, the source of that information is the public budget website that we've just spent a lot of time diving deeply into. And based on the mayor's letter that's in the front of that, it's very clear that there are not one-time funds. The piece on the ongoing spend, which I can't remember the page number in here, but it's when we sort of switch gears into part 2 of the presentation, is based on the 5-year forecast that was presented on Monday. And my understanding of that is there are no one-time funds in that presentation, which is actually part of why the structural deficit looks so large. And, you know, when I look at that, I think, you know, I know a lot of folks say, well, every city has this, but this is a great opportunity for us that, okay, we've sort of seen where the bottom is. We see the magnitude of that structural deficit, and we actually see what it looks like when we don't hide it with things like one-time funds and kind of games. And now we need to switch focus to, great, how do we fix that? How do we lead the way and use the big hearts and big ideas of this community to actually show other cities how to eliminate structural deficits and really be a leader in this area?
Yeah, I just don't want to come back 3 months from now and say, guess what? We're $30 million short and have to readjust our budget. And we've been through these before, but so for me, it's to be very clear that the funds, the numbers that I'm giving from our finance department and your presentation are not one-time funds. You know, we're talking a lot about the Coliseum sale, but that's a one-time fund, and one-time funds are usually used for a one-time effort like buying vehicles for the police, buying vehicles and creating, but not to create long-term employment opportunities for the city. So I just want to be clear that this is based on long-term funding that's available to the city of Oakland, not just today, but for the coming years.
Yes, everything is based on the assumptions outlined on that budget website. It's very clear that there are no one-time funds. And my advice also is to think about this page in here, and that recommendation 1 is to have a contingency plan. Because we know historically, the last 5 years, our revenue has been overstated in the budget by an average of 7.6%, and actually as much as 15%. And so the back's opinion is, if we do have an issue 3 months from now, it's probably because that revenue number is going to be off. And I think this revenue number is much more optimistic, or not, excuse me, not optimistic, realistic than in past years. And I think we're much more likely to hit that number. But we should be ready with a contingency plan, especially since who knows what the feds are going to do, who knows what the economy is going to look like. If we are off, as we've been historically by 7.6%, what are the actions we would make? We think that is why you would show, if there's an issue 3 months from now, that's going to be the issue.
Yeah, thank you. I just received the slides that you presented, and certainly we'll go over that. But the last question that I have for you is, you brought up the mayor's staffing levels. The mayor's staffing levels went up?
Yes.
Is that what happened? And explain to me why we needed to increase the staffing levels at the mayor's office when I'm at the other end debating that I don't have public safety and clean streets, and I need personnel to do it. And knowing the mayors of the past, the number of staffing they had, and were able to accomplish a clean, safe city. Why do I need to elevate numbers to sit at City Hall, making more rules and legislation, when I need the actions in the neighborhood?
I'll take a stab at that for you.
Yeah.
And I think your question is, why do we think that the FTEs have been elevated in the mayor's office and the classifications? We're raising this as an issue, and I think both sides have merit, right? You heard the interim mayor say there's a reason that he authorized this, because he thinks there actually needs to be more people of a certain pay grade and caliber and skill set in the mayor's office, and that's going to make the city better. I think what the back is pointing out in this presentation is, yes, but there's another side to that, which is, one, there could be an optics issue, just right, of the fact that this has happened, right? And the first thing we're doing is increasing staff and pay grade in that department. And then, yes, you also as a council have to think through, you know, if you look and assume everyone and that's paid at the midpoint, even at 11 to 12 people, that's like $600,000. Well, that could go to actually fill the audit requirement. That's in another measure. And so that's exactly the type of trade-off that the council's going to have some pretty serious discussions around.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me follow up on your question about one-time funds. As Mike said, and as the report said, we're not seeing one-time funds proposed in this new budget, but as the report card also says, we're seeing what we call a hangover from the previous one. And I would say, really, one of our things that was very heartening to see in the mayor's report is it's very forthright about this, the mayor's letter introducing the budget. And there's two places where we're seeing, let's call it the hangover. One is when we made the Coliseum decision. Actually, Mike and I were up here about a year ago talking about this. Since we made the decision to not take more fiscally prudent measures, our credit rating has actually fallen as a result of that. So that's sort of a hangover. Even though we're not proposing new one-time funds. Our cost of capital is higher. It doesn't mean we can't go to the bond market. It just means our cost is higher if our credit rating is lower. So that's one. The other, and it's mentioned in the mayor's letter, and we really want to acknowledge the forthrightness of that, is that during COVID, we got federal funds to help us offset revenue shortfall. But our spending actually went up during that period. But more importantly, we made commitments that carry over into the current day. So we reopened the police and fire MOUs, even though they weren't near for expiration. Without questioning the merit of those increases, when we make even small changes in those large numbers, it impacts other things. So those agreements were made in the presence of the COVID funds, with the budget looked more rosy because of them, but they continue on today. We're under the same wage structures that were decided then. So that is part of what's causing this structural pressure to make other cuts. So when we do something in the presence of one-time funds, and this is important to know for future, then we live with that for long periods, in this case for the duration of those MOUs. Again, not to question the validity of those decisions, but to say that that isolated decision has impacts other places and forces cuts that weren't really fully researched at the time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Brown, just very quickly, I believe our city administrator wanted to respond before your question.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you. This is an excellent presentation. I also appreciate the partnership and collaboration that you all have shown when I reached out as well. Just one piece. There's one slide that mentions the mayor's roadmap to fiscal solvency or sustainability. I can't remember what fiscal health. So I'm more than happy to work with you all. That'll certainly, it's something that's coming out of my office. I just want to have that point of clarity and welcome the opportunity to bring something forward to the BAC once the council has an opportunity to opine and hear and listen in advance. I wanted to just make ourselves available because you all have shown a level of partnership that I really appreciate and value from the time I reached out to both you and Jane. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, first off, I just wanted to really express my appreciation, of course, for the presentation today, but also just your availability, Mike and Ben, and just to help us along in the process. And so would definitely encourage my colleagues to reach out because I think that you all brought forth some really valuable insight. And then the one question that I had, just more specifically, because I know in the slide deck, I think it doesn't add this clarity around for the OFD recommendation. Which cities specifically are kind of modeling this particular example that you recommend?
Oh, the consolidation?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Berkeley is probably the closest one, but there's many other cities, and we have a deeper report on this. But the cities around the Bay Area have done this, in Northern California have done this to great advantage.
Okay, definitely would be interested in more information. Always good to know what naming actually specifically. What are some of the cities? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Houston.
Good information. I don't have the slide, so can we go back to slide number 6, please? The one that's talking about the 58% of that money, which is what, 600, and is that slide 6? No, it's the one with the 58% that the county has of that money, that's $630 million. Now, see, if I'd had the slide, we wouldn't be going back this far.
So,
Through
Okay,
the
right there.
chair, just to the council members, the
Right there.
slideshow presentations are all attached to the agenda item.
Say that one more time. I didn't see it. I printed it out, it wasn't attached, but we're, okay. So right here, number 6, it says, Oakland general population 25%, unhoused 5.8, 58% request. You was mentioning something about the county has that money, and can you explain a little bit more?
Sure.
On what's your viewpoint on capturing some of that money? Because with the lead of our president, Kevin Jenkins, we're in dialogue right now with the county for MOU, talking about this money. And I had a meeting with Supervisor Nate Miley about this money. So give me your insight on this.
So our recommendation is to engage now, because their budget deadline was the same as ours. So some of the issues are county typically distributes money by population. So we could get 25%, but I think the observation is that the money is for the unhoused. So we should ask for our percentage of the unhoused in the county is 58%. So that should be our going in position. Now, we know other cities will be lobbying too, but that's a big difference between 25 and 58. And I'll say, we also have a much larger study. We work with the UC Berkeley School of Public Policy on specific measures. So the reason the amount of money is so large is this was passed by the county, but there was legislation. The money was collected and went into an escrow fund, so there's over $500 million collected. It's an annual one, about $169 million, but since this is the startup year, the legislation has been released, now the money would begin to flow. So this is important not just for this budget, but for precedent setting. If we go in and get 58%, then that'll be the standard for future years. Other cities may lobby, but if we go in at 25% and then beg for 58, it'll be much harder. So that's why we think it's so urgent to get in that now. The other thing I'd say is that because the program is new, they may have so much money, they're saying, how do we effectively spend this? And we have, I mentioned 4, but we have a large array that we work with the UC Berkeley School of Public Policy on implementable, tangible measures that would really make a difference, and we can share that in more detail as well. So we may be able to help them say, here's the thing, if you give showers for the unhoused, they can go to a job interview and be presentable. How's that for their dignity as well as their economic welfare? What about reuniting with family? We see over 1,000% return on investment for that program. What about job assistance for the unhoused? So we're trying to find very tangible things that might not bring more unhoused to Oakland, but would help the people that are here to have dignity and become productive members of society. So we may offer, like, here's ideas. Oh, there's the grants, sometimes they talk about shovel ready. We could say, we are ready in Oakland to have these programs, and we've thought it through. So that may help us to be more credible than other cities in making that request. So that's kind of the nub of what we're suggesting. Get in there, lobby hard, maybe have some elbows with other cities going to be asking for this money too. But with over half of the county's homeless population, we have a strong moral high ground to be able to ask for a substantial share of this money.
So you're saying, so we should, it's like 630, President, through the chair, President Jenkins. Is it like, what, $630 million? Is it something like that, $640 million?
It's a little over 500 million.
No, it's in the 600s.
Yeah.
630?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you saying we should ask for like 58% of that 630?
Well, it's a negotiation, but there's an annual allocation of about 169, right? But there's an accumulated funds, so we might be able to ask for some of that as startup money. And maybe we get a disproportionate share of the startup money because this is accumulated while the litigation was pending to over $500 million. So there's some additional money that might be initial push, and we're not involved in those negotiations with the county, but you could imagine they're in possession of a lot of money and want to make it be used productively, and we can help them with tangible suggestions that would be very, very productive uses of the funds.
So through the parliamentarian, what's our legal right to ask for 58% of that money?
Through the chair to Councilmember Houston, we can get back to you on that information offline.
Okay. And we're not saying one thing or another is possible. We're saying ask for all you can. There seems to be a moral high ground. If we have more than average unhoused, we should probably get more than the average.
Okay.
They may not say yes the first time. We may have to ask over and over again.
We're not going to ask for it. We're going to demand it because that's what we deserve as a city. So thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for a vibrant discussion, for the VAC for all of your really solid volunteer efforts going into presenting some very insightful recommendations. If there's follow-up questions, can council members contact you all by email? Okay, great. Thank you.
Other comment? The lead and the paint issue. We went, the county and the city sued the paint companies together, right? And currently, the county has $9 million. The biggest lead in the paint issue is in Oakland. And that's where we won the case. It's in Oakland, but the money in the county is sitting there, $9 million. Then Oakland received $4.5 million. That's been sitting in the bank for 4 years at a non-interest location. And that information just came up last week to me, since now I'm the chairperson of the lead and the paint issue with the county. So I think we just need to be able to follow up to make sure that Oakland gets what they deserve from the county and the state and so forth. So that's another example that, you know, the city has not collected the money that should be owed to the neighbors in the city of Oakland. Thank you for that information.
Thank you, everyone. We will now call our next department if Race and Equity is here.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to say thank you for having us here today to talk about race and equity. It's always a good day when we get to do that. To tag on to that last conversation about distribution of funding, equity is a very strong argument for negotiating a rightful share of resources with the county or the state. And we're working with that across the city and on homelessness right now. We're having that conversation, that there's a huge equity aspect to the whole idea about how we distribute resources at the city, county, and state level. It's not just the purview of one entity. We're all in the same situation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our department budget today. That's my charge. But to begin with, I'm noticing, I opened the file, and I'm noticing that in your packet you have a council memo that is dated back to January. And circumstances in our department have changed since January, and the whole budget conversation has changed because of that. So I just want to correct it to say that it says we have 5 FTEs. We've never been staffed at 5. We've only been staffed up to 4. So all that's been accomplished by the Department of Race and Equity has been accomplished with 4 staff or less. And in February, we sustained a reduction in staff as part of the emergency budget adjustment that was done in February, and we are now 3 FTEs. We lost our administrative staff. So that's where we go into this budget conversation, is as a staff of 3, not 4. But it was true in January that we had 4. So it was right then, it's not correct now. The Department of Race, the reason I bring this up is that the Department of Race and Equity is a very unique department. We have a huge charge and a tiny amount of resources. So we were formed by ordinance by the City Council to implement the mission of embedding fairness and justice in everything the city does. It's that broad, everything. And so that's what we do, the 3 of us now. And we're experiencing a great deal of success here in Oakland. It's been recognized nationally, it's been recognized locally, and we're very proud of that. But it is a very, very lean operation, very lean. So as we go into this budget constriction that we're looking at of necessity, I am really aware that we all have to play a role in balancing this budget. And so I'm pretty cheerful about it, but I'm also realizing that a 25% reduction in resource is huge, and we're starting to feel it. So that's just what happens when you start with only 4 people. So it's just small from the very beginning. In order to do this, we have a very robust theory of change. We would not have been able to accomplish what we have accomplished without that theory of change. And it includes working with city staff in every single department to embed that active action that requires change in the city in order to achieve fairness and justice. Fairness and justice does not do itself. For those of us who've been activists ever, we know that it's an ongoing journey to try and create a fair and just city, a fair and just society. And so we've got people all across the city and all the departments working with us on that. We would not be able to do it otherwise. We work through city departments, equity teams in those departments, and the leadership across the city. So I think there's a slide deck of the specifics of our budget, I hope, because I did not bring a paper copy. If someone could throw it up, I'll just go over it with you. We really only have one proposal in front of you today, and that is basically to just sustain the budget the reduced level that we have achieved as of the changes in February. And this was necessary to address the structural deficit. We understand that. And we had already taken the cut to help balance the 25-27 budget in February. The reason that this was prioritized, this particular cut was prioritized as opposed to a different one. What's remaining in the department is a director and 2 technical staff, 2 program analysts, 3s. And we didn't have a lot of flexibility with just 4 staff, and the only way to reduce the budget was to cut an FTE. So what we could see is that it is possible for the remaining staff to perform the administrative duties without violating MOU limitations with regard to working above class. If we had retained the administrative staff, they would not be able to perform the technical duties that we perform, the 3 remaining staff perform, without violating the MOU. So this was just a cut of necessity. It was the only way we could meet our target. Next slide, please. The impacts of this means that it reduces our ability to work across the city with all the departments. We have a lot of duties that were covered by that administrative staff. They supported all of our training and meeting coordination, communication and program promotion. The work of equity is done primarily through communication and skill building and practice change, culture change across the city. So we have a lot of activities that have to be coordinated. Even though there's only a few of us, we get around the city very actively. We have project-related administrative activity, maintenance of our internet page and our intranet site, P-card reconciliation, bill processing, purchasing requisitions, department director schedule coordination, which is pretty busy, pretty crazy, and then, of course, our SPOC responsibilities, and that's all the kind of HR technical responsibilities. We're all covered by this administrative assistant. So now that we don't have an administrative assistant, none of those activities can go away. We can't have a functioning department without doing all of those activities. So those duties have been spread among the remaining 3 staff, which directly discounts the amount of time that we have to spend on promoting equity work across the city. So in a nutshell, that's the impact. Next slide, please. I think that, yeah, it's just our mission statement. So this is what I was saying in the beginning. Our mission is to, through the adoption of this ordinance and the establishment of the Department of Race and Equity, we will work to intentionally integrate on a citywide basis the principle of fair and just in all the city does in order to achieve equitable opportunities for all people and communities in the city of Oakland. That concludes my notes. Questions, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you so much. I think I've always, even, from my time working within the city of Oakland and leaving and stepping away, I've always really been in awe of the work that you've been able to accomplish, even given, your resources available. And so on that note, I think when you think about the composition of the council in this moment, potentially some folks may not be aware of some of the things that you've been able to really push within the city of Oakland. And so just wanted to give you the opportunity, if you could, to just kind of highlight maybe some 3 things that you've been able to kind of work on within the city to help advance the mission.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could just pull your attention just because it's easier. The way that our work works is that it's a lot of sometimes small, sometimes large things that happen all across the departments. We write an annual or semi-annual every 2-year accomplishment report that's posted on our website, and what it does is pull in all of those activities or the major activities that have happened across the city. And we've got a new report about to come out shortly. But in the council member report that you have there, it points to the CIP, which is very relevant to the budget. It represents a very high proportion of the total money that the city of Oakland spends. And we have an incredibly effective capital improvement plan that was influenced by and created through working with multiple departments to establish a systematic approach to discovering and prioritizing capital investments. And one of the ways that you can see systemic racism play out all across the country is the disinvestment geographically of areas of any urban area in the country being lesser investment, receiving lesser investment over time than other parts of the city. That's certainly played out here in Oakland. And so this capital improvement approach that prioritizes making sure that we cover all of the city and not just some parts of the city when we're making capital investments has been that it has changed our paving approach, it has changed our investment schedule with regard to needs in disinvested communities, historically disinvested communities. And this model is being copied and pilfered all across the country. It's been extremely successful in educating the public as well as the city's departments about how to prioritize the resources, as limited as they may be, prioritize the resources that we have in a more fair and just way. So that's one of the things that we're still supporting to this day, and we're still working on implementing. Of course, we have this wonderful prioritization system, but we still don't have enough money. So we're always looking for more money to implement more of the projects that are on that prioritized list. We do feel like we've mined most of the major elements across the city through several cycles of working with the community to identify projects. Now it's about completing the projects themselves. We also have the first equity cannabis program in the country, which is completely different than the way other states legalized cannabis. It made sure that those who were most impacted by the war on drugs were not left out of the cannabis industry when it became lucrative and legal. And it's been also a model that has sustained over time. That was the first thing I got to work on when I got here, was that cannabis equity program 8 years ago. It is still going strong, and we're still improving it. It has also evolved. So the great thing about equity is that we're constantly looking at how well our work is working so that we can make changes as needed across time. And I think the cannabis program is a program that we can see, because it's been in place for 8 years, has really evolved and changed to make sure it meets the needs of our marginalized communities. See, I'm trying to think of what else is in your report. There was another one too. Oh, it probably had something to do with the way that we're approaching our general plan, which has been ongoing. We also were working on the downtown specific plan when I got here 8 years ago. It has now been finalized just within the last year. And we were able to build equity elements into that, as had been requested by the city council, but there was some struggle around how to do it. So we were able to practice on the downtown specific plan. And now equity is being built into every element of the general plan, which is much broader than the downtown specific plan. And through the leadership of Bill Gilchrist and his staff, the general plan process has been really well grounded in equity and community engagement to make sure that we could correct what needed to be corrected in our general plan. Obviously, a lot of mischief has been done in the name of urban planning over the decades, and it was very important to the city of Oakland and to the planning department that we not continue that mischief or deepen it through the update to the general plan. So those are some examples.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, if there's, Councilmember Houston.
Through the chair. I heard you about the cannabis, and I don't see the equity in the brown and black. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Is this similar to like the city auditor? Like the city auditor come up with something and then it's never implemented? Is it when you put together the race and equity, is it something that you put there and we can force them, or it's just a suggestion? Because I don't see equity in my community. I do not see it in the construction. I do not see it every time it comes up. You know, it's something in another city, another state. I don't see black individuals I do not see the equity. So I'm like, is it similar to the auditor's office where they come up with something and then it's not implemented? Because I don't see it in where I stand. I don't see it.
Well, Councilmember Houston, there is no way that I would say that we've achieved equity in the city of Oakland. I would never put up a mission accomplished banner. We're undoing, 100 years of history, 100 years of disinvestment, 100 years of mistreatment by the criminal justice system, 100 years of, so in that way, no, we've not accomplished equity in the city of Oakland. Neither has any other city in this country, and we are much further along in that direction than other cities are. We are building this incrementally by looking at program by program, service by service. So here's something that I know that I've heard about in your district. We've heard from residents of East Oakland and Deep East Oakland, East Central East even, that their streets are being touched for the first time in their lifetime. People that have lived there a long time, people who've been rooted in Oakland a long time, are seeing pavement improvements, traffic revisions. They're seeing actual work going on in their community that has never happened in their lifetime. Now, does that change everything for everyone? Of course not. But if you can imagine making those kinds of incremental changes, and incremental is all that government knows how to do, is incremental. It's slow. Government is slow. It's designed that way so that we don't swing too wildly. But if you look at those incremental pieces and imagine them over time adding up to something different, we are making progress in that direction. So I want to make sure that I'm not trying to sell you that we're there, we've accomplished it, we've undone 100 years of difference in treatment in the few years that I've been here.
And I wasn't saying that. I was just like, I'm third generation Oaklander all my life. Same house, same one way, and my people are dying.
Oh,
my
yes.
people are starving. And now that I'm on the other side, where I can create policy and I have great council members with me, Rowena Brown, Kevin Jenkins, Fife, and I see some change happening, I'm gonna fight. Even if I have to fight by myself, I'm gonna fight that black individuals get their share, because I do not see it. So I just want to make it clear for the record that this wasn't to you. It's just like when I see race and equity, I do not see my people. I still see my people dying. I still see my people starving. I still see my people in the underground economy.
And that shows in the data. So one of the things that we do is we are data-driven in our arguments, and we can help you fight. We can help have this conversation. And you all are right now in the midst of looking at a very important part of this, and that is how do we spend our money? What we prioritize in the budget, our checkbook says what we prioritize. And I've heard other council members raise the same issues, and I think that this is one of those moments to fight for investing resources in ways that will actually lift up marginalized communities. This is not an easy thing, though, because as the Budget Commission just said, every time we decide to lean in one direction, it means that we have to do a commiserate exchange on the other side. And this is the tension of budget making, whether it's personal or corporate or city, is that when we spend a dollar here to lift up this issue or this concern, we of necessity have to reduce that dollar someplace else. And this creates that tension, which has a lot of difficulty in it, particularly for electeds and others who are held to account not just for equity, but for other things as well. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that this budget consideration that you are involved in right now is a true test of that mettle when you think about what is being prioritized and what's being funded and what, therefore, is not being funded. You have to look at both sides of the equation. There's no easy, fast fix. If there was, I can guarantee you there are enough caring people in the city of Oakland working here and in the community that would have already been fixed. But it's not that simple. So just know, Councilmember Houston, that we are in the fight with you. We are fighting for the same thing. The homicide rate, the death rate in the city of Oakland is a black death rate. I am crystal clear about that. I know the numbers, and I know who it is that's dying in our streets. So we talk that talk all the time. We look at that all the time, but then the question is, what do we do about it? And that's where it gets hard, right? So I don't envy you the difficult decisions that have to be made.
Right, and last thing through the chair, yeah, it hurts me. It hurts me when I see a black young man shot in the face, shot in the chest, dropped off in my district on 100 and East 14. It hurts me when I see a 24-year-old black male, 24 years old. Think about that. Everybody on this council, people that's watching, think about that. 24 years old life, shot 3 o'clock, broad daylight in the streets like an animal. And it's over economics. It's not the proper distribution of wealth. And I'm clear, and I'm crystal clear. And if I got to stand by myself, I'm going to fight like Huey would fight. That's exactly how I am. My mother is black. My father's Latino. Don't even know who he is. So all I know is black, right? And that's who I'm going to fight for. And last thing, when I mentioned cannabis, how do we know that the cannabis equity is working? How do we know that? How are we gauging that?
Councilmember Houston, we are very behind on our schedule. Is it possible to respond on the cannabis equity issue offline? I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's fine. Thank you.
We always look at outcomes, so we can get back to you on that. And we'll definitely want to pull economic development in. They're the ones that and see how they're doing. What we know is that it didn't affect a lot of people because there just aren't that many cannabis opportunities total, so it's not a huge pool of people. But what we know is that what happened here in Oakland is not what happened in my hometown of Seattle, Washington, where there's one cannabis czar and he not black, that's owning the whole black community, bought up all the real estate too. So what we know is that we were able to keep some of the negative at least from happening, and we did create some opportunity for a handful of people, but it's not enough to change it for everybody. It's not. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your work, Director Flynn. Many, many years of effort going on behind having a Department of Race and Equity, and appreciate all of your work. To the City Administrator for the next presentation.
Thank you to the chair, members of the committee. This shouldn't take very long. The impacts in the City Administrator's office are largely on the personnel side. So the 4 key areas that are impacted by reductions are the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, Communications, Neighborhood Services, and Homelessness. With respect to ADA, one position is moving from my office over to the Department of Transportation, but there's also the freezing of 1 FTE, which is an architectural associate. That position was, there was a hope, it was quite a few years ago, that could be a grant-funded position, but that has not materialized, so that's a freezing of that particular position. But with that position transferring over to the Department of Transportation, that's a place where it would sit because it's largely infrastructure related. In the area of communications is 1 FTE, City Administrator Analyst position. The impact on that particular role is strategic communications, digital services, and our inclusive and community engagement. One of the things I do recognize, one of the challenges that we have is the pace in which we're able to get information out, receive information, turn things around. So that's an impact that we certainly recognize with such a very small team, but that's sort of where we've landed. With respect to neighborhood services, as you all know, there was a decision made to do away with the neighborhood services coordinator sort of program. This one position specifically is an assistant to the city administrator position responsible for convening and or managing interdepartmental interagency work. I know Councilman Brown, you've mentioned just the need to look at our NEST program. Our Deputy City Administrator DeVries has really started to think about how do we reimagine the NEST program to make sure that we can capitalize on the services that are provided and the needs across the community. So that too is something that we certainly want to really reconsider and figure out ways in which we can redeploy the work. And lastly, in the area of homelessness, it's the deletion of 1 assistant city administrator position that currently holds the portfolio of encampment management. However, we want to look at ways in which we can redistribute that work. But I think having a team of folks that are multidisciplinary in nature to see how we can better utilize those resources going forward. But that is an impact across the board. But there is a move to create a PM3 position to help carry that load, because I think the responsibility is such that you don't want to have an assistant city administrator carrying that weight because of the time commitment, but better utilizing existing resources for other purposes. So that's what I have there.
Thank you, colleagues. Questions? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you so much. Through the chair to our administrator, just off the top of your head, based on these kind of reductions, do Do you know what the total, like dollar amount? Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. No, I don't know off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that for you. I want to give an accurate number. I think it's a little bit, it might be a little bit more. Yeah, maybe 1.5, 1.6 million, perhaps. But I'll get an accurate number for you. I apologize.
Councilmember Houston, I apologize. We need you for quorum for another couple of minutes till Councilmember Wong is on her way back. Yeah, she's very close to being back. Councilmember Brown, then Councilmember Guile.
Excellent. And while I have you, would you happen to have any insights on the NEST program and potentially what type of funding would be needed in order to kind of advance that effort?
Sure, so I don't have all the details. I do know that Deputy Administrator DeVries did meet with, and I also joined him in a conversation with the Oakland Police Department as well to figure out ways that we can really work together. There was a program, and I don't know the name of it, that we sort of employed quite a few years ago that we wanted to sort of re-envision, reimagine, and maybe even retool it to make sure that we are able to, like I said, deliver on the services that our communities are asking for, because that was the convening and connecting is something that still is missed. We can certainly come back with a specific dollar amount of what would be needed, but there would be a cost. That is something that's coming forward, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a presentation. I'll need to get that over to you all. I know Joe presented out on that not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken.
And I guess more specifically, cost for additional staff to help manage it, or would it fall under
It
our
would
current?
fall under that current program. And again, we're in the space of trying to control cost, across the board, but certainly want to just be mindful of what it would take going forward. But how sustainable is it? Is certainly something I want to keep in mind. But we can get an idea of some. And I think the other thing too is not just the cost for the position, but what are the other sort of underlying costs that we may not be thinking about? Because I want to make sure we get an accurate dollar amount for you.
Okay, and then one last question. You attended my town hall in partnership with Councilmember Wong, and you probably heard me talk a little bit about the grants manager kind of position and the work that she's been able to do. Would you happen to know offhand if there's any kind of departments within the city that are necessarily in need of additional kind of grant writing support?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I think departments that do a lot of grant writing, I'm just thinking about OPD, DOT, Public Works, they have some internal capacity already. I think the one area I would say there's probably a need for more collaboration and cohesion with respects to the grants office. If we don't have a technical actual office, but having an actual structural office in place would be something that I would love to bring forward to the council. One resource that we didn't tap into historically was that of our of Townsend and Associates, our lobbying firm. So we've been able to leverage that relationship a lot more than we have in the past. So I'm very proud of the fact that our current citywide grants analyst has leaned in very heavily there to make sure that we're capitalizing on the resources of Townsend and Associates to augment the work of our existing staff.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And you know what? Honestly, I have one more question. It is about the ADA position, and I guess how can I say this? Can you share out if there are any kind of concerns under this umbrella to ensure that we are fully in compliance with the need of facilitating like that a robust program for the ADA programming?
Yeah, I would definitely say, currently the ADA coordinator does an excellent job in working across, departments with respect to trying to deliver on any future needs, any consent decrees or anything along those lines. The one thing I will say, having the position seated in a actual infrastructure department, it does make sense because you're really getting eyes on the projects and making sure that whatever the schedule is for all of our ADA requirements, specifically as an example, our ADA ramps, making sure that we're compliant there, and how many ramps are we agreeing to build every single year. So that's something we want to make sure that we have line of sight of. But I will tell you that in working very closely, I have personal insight, specifically working closely with Josh Rohn and the previous employer, recognize that there's a consent decree that was in place, but what do we do and how do we deliver on those? So you have a team that's in place that has the technical expertise as well as the experience in handling these types of issues, but having that additional resource in the department would be extremely helpful.
And then can you clarify, because as I was looking through the website, I was having a hard time discerning exactly how many positions we have within the city that are focused in on this area?
I would need to get that
Okay.
to you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gaia.
Yes, thank you to our administrator. So the question that I have for you, one is, I would like to see a budget presentation that clearly presents the ongoing funding source that we have within the city, and also the one-time dollars that we are receiving, and what does the one-time dollars fund? Because a good budget deals with ongoing funding that we can clearly count upon to deal with our general purpose activities and staffing. And it's an example. Okay, right now we've been having a lot of press conference regarding the sale of the Coliseum, right? But the sale of the Coliseum, when it's generated, is a one-time funding resource. And what would that one-time funding resource be used for? Because my understanding where it is today, and we had many press conferences, is that, you know, they have, the only dollars they have made available to the city of Oakland is $5 million. But the $5 million, I was told, is sitting in a bank, but not earning interest. And that's the question that they're presenting at the other level from the sale of the. Then the other one, as an example, just for clarity, Alameda County selling their half of the Coliseum to the Oakland A's for $85 million. But they have received the $85 million, but then the negotiation is between the A's and the African American Sports and Entertainment. So, but I just want to, I mean, that's a major investment property that the city's given up. But I want to know from you in terms of exactly what is the ongoing revenue that I have today, and what are the one-time funding sources, and what are those one-time funding sources being used for? As an example, the federal dollars for the police department, right? And the millions that we're getting, but and I've met with the people in DC about that, but the purpose of those dollars are to use for police officers, but foot patrol officers. And that's what the investment of that dollar given to us is for. But I just need clarity for the council members to clearly understand that the money that we're using for all these activities are part of our general budget, and the other activities that we're using are one-time funding source, so we don't come back 4 or 5 months later and find out that, guess what? And I've gone that through, and Oakland Unified is going through that again, and we've gone through the city before. But I just want to clearly designate that this is an ongoing revenue, and this is a one-time revenue that we're using to fund certain activities. I would appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
Council President Jenkins.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what the President Pro Tem says, especially about the one-time usage. And then I think President Pro Tem Gallo is really ahead. You know, if and when the Coliseum sales do go through, are we just going to spin it up in one day, right? Is there a plan to spin it? I know in our consolidated fiscal policy, it says it should be used for this or it should be used for that, but I think it's something as council members we should start thinking about. Council President Pro Tem is right. We've received $5 million. I don't think it's sitting in an account.
Yeah, well, they told me that, that 5 million is sitting in a non-interest account in the bank. And that's a whole lot of millions to be at a non-interest account in the bank. That's what I got from
Got you.
the folks.
So
Anyways,
we'll get an update and see where that's at and everything. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. These past 2 budget cycles, we've used one-time funding, including the facility, Raiders facility, then the Coliseum facility, and we were very clear, the administration, mayor's office, that we're not using one-time funds for ongoing costs, and you're absolutely right.
And so, colleagues, do we have any more questions for our administrator? Now's the time. Okay, excellent. So at this point, we can move on to our next presentation, which will be from Finance Department.
Good afternoon, Erin Roseman, Director of Finance. I have a quick presentation, as everyone does. Our approach and prioritization within our budget submission was, one, to strengthen fiscal oversight and to ensure that we can try to access or continued access to the bond market. We've also prioritized revenue enhancement and tax compliance. We're also focusing on centralizing core financial functions for efficiency, and then modernizing purchasing to align with the city administrator's strategic goals and the overall goals of the organization. Our service impacts to the finance department's budget, a big majority focuses around the Revenue Bureau and our revenue collections. We've made strategic and objective realignments, so reducing vacant positions, sort of doing internal reorgs, moving positions to different divisions to align with better revenue collection. Some of those include dismantling the tax compliance unit within the Revenue Bureau and separating it into the business tax unit, into the liens unit, into the collections unit, so that there's more capacity in those other units, but also helps to streamline the process in terms of revenue enhancement. We've also are looking towards transitioning fire vegetation billing into liens and sidewalk repair into liens on properties, as opposed to invoicing the property owners and them having to pay a bill. The lien methodology gives you a better revenue collection outcome. One of the other focuses that we have is streamlining procurement, implementing the results of a contract review study from 2024 and the recommendations to bring in investments, automated software, reduce inefficiencies, and better oversight and contract compliance. In terms of FTEs for the whole department, we've eliminated or reduced 15 FTEs and $2 million. Some of the eliminations or position cuts are just sort of right-sizing things. A position was a tax auditor 2, we're downgrading it to a tax auditor 1, things like that. There's several of those, and then there are some real eliminations that would result in layoffs throughout the process. In the general purpose fund, there are 7 FTE changes, and the other 8 positions are within the other funds. The finance department has a $52 million budget across all funds and a $23 million budget in the general purpose fund. One other consideration that we'd like everyone to understand is that our financial system, our Oracle ERP system, is quickly approaching the need to be upgraded or to be replaced. That would be a 3 to 5 year horizon, but it's putting it on the radar. Some of the challenges that finance, HR, and IT has is related to this particular system, how well it functions, how well it's built out, needed enhancements, or needing to move away from this software. So we're putting it out here to make sure that everyone is aware that, you know, some of the ongoing challenges that we currently have will become a bigger problem in about the 5-year mark. And with that, I will stop there and take questions.
Excellent. Colleagues, any questions? Councilmember Wong.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Brown. Yeah, just jumping off the presentation that we just heard from the BAC, they had noted that the percent of fines collected for illegal dumping is 11%. I guess I was wondering, what can we anticipate? Can you walk us through the process, first of all, just of the collections process for illegal dumping, how the finance department is implicated in that, and also whether we can anticipate under this budget the continuation of only 11% collection, or how do we ultimately increase that percentage way further up? I think we've all expressed an interest in holding people accountable for illegal dumping. And then just a comment, I am a fan of anything that can streamline our procurement process, so that sounds good.
Illegal dumping is the responsibility of Public Works Department. When it gets to the Finance Department, they would have delivered to us accounts that need to be collected on. So they would have gone through distributing or citing people, follow-up notices, whatever adjudication process, and then what they deliver to the Finance Department is receivables that need to be collected upon. Just imagine, if you will, like in your personal life, you didn't pay your, some sort of bill, and it goes to the collection agency, and you get a new notice that says you owed, the medical insurer this money. We're the collection agency at that point, so the Department of Public Works has to do all of the lead-up activities before it comes to us as the collection.
I see. So is the issue, for the reason that only 11% are currently collected, is it in part because we don't have enough environmental enforcement officers, or what is the underlying reason?
So, my understanding, and I'm just sort of regurgitating what I understand from Public Works, yes, there is somewhat of ability to cite and to find the individuals who have done the illegal dumping. Like, how do you determine who did it, right? I think their issue is you find bags of trash on the side of the road. They can go through the bag of trash and try to ascertain whose trash it was by receipts, old mail, or what have you. Then you have to make some sort of case or make the connection between that trash and that person, prove some sort of connectivity that they did do it, like it wasn't there by accident, the wind didn't blow the bag out the trash can. And so I think their biggest issue is citing people and making the connection so that they can actually issue them a citation and it sticks.
Okay, that's helpful. And any issues on the collection side of things?
So, when you send a bill or an item to a collection service, there has to be some sort of perfection of that case. You need to know, the collection agency, in this case, the Finance Department, needs to know that they've gone through all of the preceding legal steps for us to then take the collection activities. So we need to know for certain that that debt really does belong to you. And if you, sort of make the correlation to your personal life, you get the original letter that says, you owed this debt, you have 30 days to dispute it or deny, and then we can move forward with it. And so if we don't have a perfected case, then our collection activities won't bear fruit.
Okay, that's helpful. And final thing is just, I assume that code enforcement is a similar relationship as well?
Code enforcement is within the Planning and Building Department. And so they have depending on what they are citing you for, and the legal basis for it, it may have a different path.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Councilmember Gallo?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the information. So the question that I have is, when will the council have the actual numbers, budget numbers, from one item to the end that we can, because they keep changing. The amounts keep changing. When will the council have a set of numbers that we can say these are the ongoing financial dollars that you have, and these are the one-time funds that we're receiving to do these services. In other words, I'm looking for something that's final so we can debate and vote upon, as opposed to coming back next week, well, guess what, this changes, or guess what, I got the Coliseum over here with this other thing, or this other activity is changing. So when do you think we could actually have a set of numbers that we can call, these are the final budget numbers that you have to be able to vote upon or make any changes?
Through the chair to Councilmember Gallo.
Yeah.
So the original proposed document, which is the link in OpenGov, plus the correction and errata, is the entire mayor's proposed budget. And so the combination of those two documents is your presentation of the mayor's proposed budget. And that bottom line number is something that you could vote on when we bring the resolution. So unless the council has amendments to it, then that would be what is presented to the council to vote on altogether.
Okay, so the latest proposal by the mayor, on the mayor's budget, that's our final document that we need to make changes, adjustments to it. I mean, because I'm hearing, like even going through this process, I'm hearing different things, different numbers, and different services. And I just want to be clear that's, and I don't want to come back 2 months later and say, guess what, the numbers are these, and we've been through those before. So I just want to be able to, from our finance department and our administration, be able to just say, this is it. This is your budget. You have to take action. And if you want to make an adjustment, these are the areas that you can make adjustments on. So, but you're saying that we have that document available now?
You have the information. We have not brought to council, the entire body, the budget resolution to vote on. So we'll agendize that resolution saying here's the mayor's proposed budget and all of the local measures. It's, you know, multiple pages and multiple resolutions that constitute sort of adopting the budget. So we will take it to rules, I think, next week, and it will be agendized for
June 17th, I believe.
Thank you, June 17th.
And that'll be our...
That will be your first opportunity to take a vote on it. In between now and June 17th, the Council Budget Committee and any other council members could bring forth amendments to what has been proposed by the mayor. And so it still has to be balanced. So if you add something, you need to take something away. And then at June 17th would be the first opportunity for the whole body to vote on it.
But that funding source that you'll provide for us will clearly be defined. This is an ongoing revenue that you have, and this is a one-time funding effort. So we don't get the two confused, right?
If it's the will of the council, we can bring back additional staff reports or additional supplemental information that outlines what's ongoing, what's not ongoing, one time, make sure that that delineation is clear in any sort of additional informational reports before you make your final decision.
Thank you, thank you.
Excellent. And so I do have a couple questions as well, but just want to confirm, does Councilmember Ramachandran have her hand up in the Zoom?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, excellent. So my first question, would you happen to know the costs associated with upgrading Oracle?
So our Oracle system has multiple modules, and it depends on the module that you be looking at. It's multiple millions of dollars. There's lots of sort of unbuilt out opportunities. Anything is possible in an ERP system. So, I mean, anything you can imagine you could get if you can afford it. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to make sure that this sort of baseline is there. And so the upgrade going forward, I would say between 5 and 10 million. If you were trying to replace the entire ERP system, you could look at $50 million.
I see. And then you all would be coming before the body way in advance before we need to make these decisions, or?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And then bear with me as I try to engage this question. over the course of some of the presentations that we've had, especially with human resources and just really hearing from other departments around the hiring process. And I just wanted to touch base around, I guess, like finance's role in ensuring we have a clear kind of hiring process. I know somewhere along the line there, departments have to engage with finance to check, hey, is this money available, I think. But I just wanted to kind of touch base, like how many staff do we have kind of working on payroll within your department?
Okay, so we have a payroll bureau, and that bureau is more of consists of the payroll clerks that support each department, and then payroll technicians that enter data into the Oracle financial system. Outside of the payroll bureau, the budget office approves and reviews hiring requisitions. And then outside of finance and within every department, there's that SPOC, or the single point of contact, that's a designation of an individual. So hiring is a community effort, if you will, in the whole city. I think I've heard some of the comments and how difficult it is to get individuals hired. So connecting it back to the Oracle system. Oracle is the system that you key data into, and it's the system of record for finances and for personnel. But hiring process is in a different system, NeoGov. And so when we've all been onboarded and we HR posts jobs to the website, it is through a system called NeoGov. NeoGov is not integrated into Oracle. So you do all of that information in NeoGov. Your SPOC is sort of managing that in coordination with your HR analysts and techs. When the person is ready to be hired, we print out, we literally print out a packet of about 45 pages of documentation to hire someone. That goes to your payroll clerk. The payroll clerk validates it, gets all of the backup information, copy of your driver's license, social security card, all of that stuff, the I-9, and then it routes to central payroll, where they key some of it in, and then it goes to HR, where they key some of it in, and then it goes to retirement, where they key some of it in, and then it finally lands in your personnel record. What I also skipped in there is the budget connection. In the approval process in NeoGov, any requisition that's going to be hired does workflow through the budget office. But if we back up into the overall budgetary process, so where we are right now, what you as a body approves is a total authorized amount of FTEs that we cannot go over. So if this budget has 4,627 FTEs in it, the budget office has the first duty to ensure that there's no more than 4,627 FTEs are hired. So when you go in the NeoGov process and they're routing it around, it goes to budget to make sure that we are not exceeding the number of authorized FTEs. So that's the requisition. Then it matriculates through the rest of the workflow process. When it gets back to budget, it is a budgetary check. So in relation to the vacancy savings, what percentage, how many positions have we, or how long a position is funded for, when it makes it back to the budget office, they're checking for that. If you only authorized your position in your office for 6 months at $100,000 salary, the next check is a budgetary check. Is this longer than 6 months? Does it meet the $100,000 requirement? Is it going to make your department go over budget, or does your department still have funding for it? The budget office does that validation when you're ready to hire, because you could have made an offer to someone for $120,000, but you really only had $100,000. So if it gets hung up in the budget office on the second validation, it is that. Then the department needs to go find additional funding to make the position go through. Once it leaves there, it goes to the city administrator's office, because in the last year, we've had a hiring freeze, a selective hiring freeze. And so while the finance department is making these validation checks to make sure you don't override your FTE account and that you don't go over budget in your salary account, because we've been trying to reduce expenditures, every position is reviewed by the city administrator's office to see if he's making an exception or not? Is there some other circumstance as to why we would allow it to go forward, even if it doesn't meet those other validations?
I see. And so we're currently, at least from the report that we had yesterday, we currently are at minimum 90-day kind of hiring timeframe. I know some departments would say that it's a little bit longer. And so I guess in all of that you stated, would you happen to have any recommendations on how we can make that process more simple?
Right, so one of them is the integration of NeoGov into Oracle, right? When we bring on someone, we usually recommend that they have a start date that's at least 45 days later, because you have this workflow, that paper printout problem, the papers matriculating from desk to desk, and then needing to be entered, and then you have someone who needs like a 2-week head start. So that person needs to be able to put their notice in at their other job or what have you. So part of the time delay is the lack of integration of NeoGov and Oracle. There is a technological hiccup in terms of NeoGov and Oracle being implemented. And one of those hiccups is the IT department is just now trying to help us get around. We took Oracle from an on-premise server to the cloud. And so now that it's in the cloud, it gives IT the better ability to do integrations with other services. And so they're working through, and if you recall, I think at FMC this week, they moved forward a resolution for contracts and those overall enterprise contracts. And one of those contracts in the list is the Oracle integrator. So getting the Oracle integrator through contract to be able to then do some of these easier integrations allows them to move forward. Clearly, IT then has an issue with, do they have appropriate funding in their department to be able to implement all of these things?
I see. And so I guess the long story short of all of that, we've already invested in trying to make it better, and we just need to implement.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, any additional questions for finance? Councilmember Wong?
Just out of curiosity, I know that switching systems is a very complex and thing. It's not easy to switch systems, but just out of curiosity, I did a quick research exercise while we were talking here in terms of different ERP systems, and it looks like Tyler Tech, for example, is something that is used in the public sector and is also less costly pretty widely, and I'm just wondering if we've ever explored using different systems, or has Oracle been the one that we've leaned on because it's like a legacy system?
We've had Oracle for over 20 years. Yes, we have looked at Tyler Technologies. Tyler Technologies usually functions for smaller cities. And now I'm forgetting the name of their main general ledger software, but the complexity of how Oakland runs sort of excludes at least Tyler Technologies in its previous iterations. I know Tyler has also, purchased other smaller technology companies, and they may offer other solutions, but generally Tyler Technology is for smaller cities.
Okay. And it sounds like we've at least done some exploration of different systems as we move forward with what sounds like a potentially very expensive contract with Oracle. So, okay. All right, that's it.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Director Roseman.
Thank you.
And Bradley. Okay, and so now I believe next we'll hear from the Public Ethics Commission.
Thank you, council members. Could we please put up the slides? Thank you. All right, thank you, council members. My name is Nicholas Heidorn. I'm the executive director of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present. So for the benefit of the public, the Ethics Commission is an independent agency. We're responsible for enforcing and administering Oakland's anti-corruption laws. We basically have 4 core services. First, we're the filing officer for your campaign finance filings and your lobbyist filings. We are the enforcement agency for the city for anti-corruption laws. That means campaign finance, government ethics, lobbying, and transparency laws. provide education, advice, training on those same laws, and finally, we administer the city's campaign public financing program. Next slide, please. So in terms of the approach to the budget and prioritization, I think it's helpful to ground it a little bit in what occurred this current fiscal year. So the city declared the presence of an extreme fiscal necessity, which enabled it to waive certain ballot measure required maintenance of effort and minimum staffing and funding. PC was one of those agencies. So the PC's budget was reduced by about half versus what would be required under the charter and ballot measures through the postponement of the Democracy Dollars program. Now, fasting forward to this budget largely extends those same cuts, which will require another declaration of fiscal necessity, but does include some helpful enhancements that I'll also highlight as well. So if you look at the prioritization, the budget prioritizes the following for our agency. First, maintaining core services and minimizing workforce impacts. In many ways, those are essentially the same thing. We're a very small agency, we're 9 FTE. We have no staff redundancy, meaning there's no staffer at the PEC who does the same job as another staffer at the PEC. Our filing officer is one person, our advice branch is one person. So for this reason, maintaining existing staff is key to maintaining our services. So I'm pleased to report that the proposed budget does not eliminate any GPF-funded positions for the PEC. Now that said, the PEC did get a grant last year, which we used to hire an outreach specialist to do really community-oriented and equity-oriented outreach for the PEC. That grant expires on July 1st, and unfortunately, that is not being extended through the GPF. So that means we will effectively be losing a personnel when that grant expires. Another priority is strengthening our critically understaffed enforcement unit. I'll discuss that a little bit later on another slide on the impacts. And then finally, as I shared at the outset, the approach to this budget would be to postpone the launch of the Democracy Dollars program for 2026 while still preserving some necessary investments to ensure the potential to implement in 2028. So what does that mean? That means that there's no funding in this budget for vouchers for Democracy Dollars. And sorry, I should back up. The Measure W created the Democracy Dollars program. This is a strengthened version of public financing for Oakland. This was placed on the ballot by the council in 2022 and passed by the voters. It was set to launch in 2024, but was postponed to this fiscal year. With this budget, we would postpone it again. There's no funding for the vouchers, for the administrative costs. Most of the staff positions are frozen. And so for that reason, postponing for 2026 would be inevitable. I'll move now to the service impacts. So the primary service impact at a high level to flag for the council is that the current proposed budget would eliminate all campaign public financing in Oakland for 2026. Oakland has had campaign public financing of some form for about a quarter of a century, since 1999. With Democracy Dollars postponed, when Democracy Dollars was implemented, it repealed our prior system, which was the limited public financing program. The council in the last budget chose to extend that program as kind of a stopgap measure while Democracy Dollars was postponed. But that extension expired in 2024. So we're entering into 2026 with an LPF program that has not been reauthorized and a Democracy Dollars program that would be postponed. So what that effectively means is there will be no public financing. Some of the actual impacts of that, Oakland has always had public financing as part of its kind of suite of strategies for anti-corruption. The goal is to make it so that candidates don't need to be as reliant on major donors who may want something from the city for their campaigns. It also helps to ensure that candidates have sufficient funds to get their word out and reach their voters. So in the last 3 cycles when we had the LPF, candidates who maxed out and qualified got between $20,000 and $35,000 in reimbursements. We've seen this last cycle, a lot of IE spending, that kind of counterbalances that a little bit. Finally, people who opt into public financing also agree to certain restrictions on how they finance, like not overly self-financing. Oh, I apologize, I didn't see I was being timed. If you give me 30 seconds, I'll try and wrap up quickly with the other slides. In terms of the PEC, this has been a core service that we've done for 20 years. The PEC would recommend, if Democracy Dollars is to be postponed, reinstating the LPF so that that core service is not eliminated for an election cycle. LPF costs $77,500 per year, so it's a relatively small cost to maintain public financing until Democracy Dollars can launch. Next slide, please. Now the happier slide. I am pleased to report and appreciative of the Councilmember Jenkins and the administration for some important enhancements to our investigative unit, which has been severely understaffed. So this budget will add 1 investigator to the enforcement unit, as well as a part-time law clerk and some other things, a few $10,000 to $20,000 in additional O&M to support our enforcement unit. This is really important. We currently have around 152 complaints to just 1 investigator, which is not at all a sustainable caseload. So this will increase our capacity to investigate and resolve complaints, improve our ability to deter violations by actually showing that we're prosecuting and leading to fines, and of course decrease the time to resolve complaints, which is important for people who submit complaints, but also people who are subject to complaints so they can get resolution. The only final thing I'll flag is currently our enforcement staff. We have 2 enforcement staff, 1 chief, 1 investigator. Its complaint ratio is 1 to 76. If you look at the graph up there, you'll just see how far we are from our peers. We're at 1 to 76. Other local ethics commissions about 1 staff to 10 complaints ratio. This will bring us, with this additional FTE, will bring us to about 1 to 50. So much better, doubling of our investigative capacity, but still far from where we need to be to have a sustainable enforcement unit. So that'll be something you'll be hearing more about from the PC later. With that, I'm happy to conclude and answer any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Colleagues, any questions? Council President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. And less questions, but more comments for the council members. I think we're going to have to get serious about democracy dollars. We're either going to do it or we're not. Right? So somebody's going to run a ballot measure and ask the voters to pay for it, or we're going to have to go to the voters and clean it back up. I think at this point, we continue talking about democracy dollars. There's no funding mechanism. So is somebody going to have someone going to go to the ballot and ask the voters to run another parcel tax? If not, we need to clean it up in the charter review. We want to root out corruption in the city. And so budget chairs, if you're listening, I would like a position for the Public Ethics Commission to deal with council when it comes to being available for council to get advice, to call. I think there's a proposal that if the executive director can share a proposal with council what that position might be able to look like. I think it's important as we're rooting out corruption in our city that we have someone that we can go to advice and listen to. And budget chairs, if you are listening, it'd be great if there were $500,000 in overtime for OPD for legal dumping, $3 million in Measure NN for illegal dumping and graffiti abatement, and an administrative position in the office of the council president as we are looking at our administrator terming out in the next 3 to 4 years. It'd be great if we had someone to be able to come in and help, if you guys are listening.
Thank you so much, Council President Jenkins. Colleagues, any additional comments? Councilmember Houston.
Through the chair, I'm listening, President, and I'm not chairing, but I'm listening, and I hear you.
I mean, I think we are all ears. Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree with Council President Jenkins. We need to address the corruption in our city. I guess to that point, just a question, for the complaints that you noted and that ratio, can you give us a sense of, where, sorry, right, into the mic. Okay, what are those complaints alleged? What are they, what are the types of complaints? Are they elected officials? Are they, public servants within our city body? Like, where are many of the complaints coming from? What's the nature? Thank you. And also, you had a graph that was really around the ratio of complaints per staff member. I'd be interested to know if our city has more complaints than other cities on a per capita basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. So, yes, the Ethics Commission, the types of complaints that we look at, I'll start with who we regulate. So our mandate includes for government ethics laws, that would be any elected official, any city staff would fall under ethics laws. Contractors can, in some cases, also fall under it. Campaigns, that would be candidates, people who do independent expenditures. Lobbying would, of course, be the lobbyists themselves. So those would be the main community of people that we regulate. In terms of the types of investigations, it really varies. Some of them are quite serious, so it would be bribery, nepotism, conflict of interest, campaign money laundering. Those would be some examples of some of the more serious types of complaints that we have. On the lower end would be reporting violations. For example, failing to file a Form 700, reporting your financial interests each year. We have a pretty healthy mix of all of them, but to give like an example of like, is this just Form 700s? It's not. I think we have about 10 of those 150 are Form 700s at this point. Oh, and then in terms of per capita, I would have to go and take a look because of the divergent populations. I'm not sure how we compare there.
In terms of who the complaints are directed at, where is the majority directed at? Is it against elected officials? What have you noticed in terms of trends?
I know that our two most common complaints are government ethics violations and campaign finance. Campaign finance, I believe, is our highest category, so that would be candidates and independent expenditure committees. Then after that would be government ethics. We tend to have a mix in terms of who that covers, but they're more city employees, so mostly city employees.
Okay. And is there one department that you've noticed? I'd be curious, any trends here?
You know, I don't have that offhand. We do publish some statistics in our bi-monthly reports for enforcement, and then we do, usually every 6 months, we do a breakdown of the exact types of violations that we currently have on the books, so I could find our last report and send it to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
And, you know, not to get into the weeds of things, but I am curious, as candidates are kind of coming in and paying, if I recall, I think, you know, candidates have to pay a certain amount to even kind of get entry into a campaign, into being on the ballot. And so I'm curious, does the money that candidates submit, what fund does that go to? You know, does that go directly to help support the positions within your department?
So I think you're referring to the fees that candidates have to pay to appear on the ballot. So those aren't collected by the PUC. The clerk actually handles the part of getting on the ballot. So that's probably a fee that you pay to the clerk, so I couldn't answer on that. Mm-hmm. A fee that we do collect, for example, we do collect lobbyist registration fees. So every lobbyist has to pay a fee to register and then file their reports. Those funds go back to the general purpose fund.
I see. Thank you
and
so
then
much.
We also impose fines and collect late fees, and all those funds don't stay with our department. They go back to the general purpose fund as well.
Okay, excellent. Colleagues, any additional questions? Councilmember Houston?
Through the chair. So when you leaving us? I want to know when you leaving us. I heard you was gone.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, so my last day with the commission will be July 7th, and we're in the middle of a recruitment process that, thank you for the opportunity to plug, closes June 2nd. So if you are interested and care about ethics, there's an open application process.
I enjoy working with you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
All right.
All right, and so thank you so much. And our next presentation will be from our city auditor.
And do you have the schedule for the next meetings? Can you announce them publicly before then? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael C. Houston, the city auditor. To get to it, we have some slides. In approaching our budget target, the Office of the City Auditor considered charter mandates, legal opinions, and voter-approved ballot measures that set minimum staffing levels for our office. Measure X, passed in 2023, mandated a minimum of 14 full-time equivalent positions, and the passage of Measure NN in November 2024 included an additional auditor, setting our minimum staffing level at 15 full-time equivalent positions. But due to past declarations of fiscal necessity, minimum staffing levels for the city auditor's office have not yet been realized. No matter what, at a minimum, according to a 2006 formal legal opinion by the city attorney's office, the city council must provide minimum funding so that the city auditor may perform without material impairment his charter mandated duties. The city auditor's office understood the challenge of the city's budget shortfall and sought ways to identify significant cost savings while still carrying out our charter mandated responsibilities. Specifically, we proposed raising 2 full-time equivalent positions, and we identified recurring audits that, in our opinion, could and should be funded by restricted funds that support the services that are the subject of mandated recurring audits. Using these various restricted funds for mandated recurring audits could result in $561,000 in ongoing savings for the general purpose fund. And we propose relying more on contractors and graduate students to assist in completing our charter mandated duties, at least in the short term. The proposed budget provides resources for my office to contract with an outside agency to complete 7 mandated recurring audits. The proposed budget provides resources to hire graduate fellows to assist with conducting audits timely at a cost of about $25,000 from operations and maintenance budget. The work that our office does, including projects currently underway, includes audits that are specifically mandated by the city charter or the municipal code or legislation. However, my office's mandate is also to address the greatest risks facing the city of Oakland. Examples include a cybersecurity audit, audits of the police department's emergency response times, illegal dumping, financial management of capital improvement projects, and the finance department's revenue bureau, all currently underway. Audits in the queue pending additional resources are the citywide personnel investigations audit, which was requested by the city council, and the audit of emergency response times focusing on the fire department, as well as several other audits to be determined for our upcoming 25-26 audit work plan. And that's due to be published in August pursuant to the city charter. The proposed budget will limit the number of projects we can take on, the scale of the projects we take on, as well as our ability to complete projects in a timely manner. And these include our recurring and one-time audits, semi-annual recommendation follow-up reports, special counsel requests, the management of our whistleblower hotline, the completion of whistleblower investigations, ballot measure analyses, and annual reports. Ideally, this is a time in which the Office of the City Auditor would be fully staffed and growing because our responsibilities continue to increase. Interestingly, the budget for the office has technically grown through the passage of ballot measures, but in an environment of frozen positions, we have not been able to hire the staff needed to keep up with the growing mandates. For your reference, here's the City Auditor's Office organizational chart, which shows the positions frozen in 23-25, as well as positions proposed to be frozen in the upcoming biennial budget. Among the positions that remain frozen in the existing proposed biennial budget is one entry-level performance auditor position that our office is currently recruiting for. I should note that since the initial mayor's proposed budget, since it was released, one of those entry-level performance auditor positions was unfrozen, and this is not reflected in this chart shown here, but it is reflected in the errata. For the Office of the City Auditor to be able to meet its responsibilities, we need one of the performance auditor positions, which is currently under recruitment, to be unfrozen. And we need an additional $108,000 in operations and maintenance to cover contracting expenses. I also want to note that while every dollar counts, reductions to the city auditor's office will not resolve the city's budget deficits. As one of the smaller departments in the city, our office's percentage of the biennial budget is de minimis, and our work identifies cost savings through our audits and investigations. Furthermore, because our office is so small, any cuts have a bigger impact to us than proportionate cuts would have on, or the same cuts would have on large departments. Lastly, today, today the city is challenged by multiple interrelated conditions that have degraded the quantity, quality, and timeliness of city services and have increased the threat of fraud, waste, and abuse within our municipal government. These conditions include slacking revenues, soaring expenses, high staff vacancies, missing and outdated systems, policies, and procedures, and turnover among city leadership. The city auditor's office is uniquely positioned to address these conditions through independent and objective analysis, audits, and investigations that will improve the transparency, efficiency, effectiveness, and equity of city programs at a time that this work is sorely needed. In addition, investing in the city auditor's office communicates to Oaklanders that their city leadership is committed to creating a more ethical and more trustworthy government. That's it.
Thank you so much, Council President Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Auditor. Last but not least, so I have two questions. So the ballot measures. So usually in the ballot measures, it says like you're required to do an audit. Do you get any finances out of those ballot measures to do those audits?
That's a good question. The most recently passed one, Measure NN, actually dedicates funding specifically for those required audits to our office. So, and that is reflected in the proposed budget. As part of our proposal, we identified several audits or several funds connected to those various ballot measures, and we're proposing that those go to funding the audits, but they currently are not.
Okay, I mean, I think that's something we have to look at as far as through the chair. When we do charter cleanup, it's one of the things that we're going to have to do to make sure that our auditor is fully funded. And we have a lot of unfunded mandates that are happening that are causing the work to slow down in different departments. And some of the audits that you're doing, what is the difference between the audits that you do and the audits that the Inspector General is tasked to do?
So the Inspector General's office has specific tasks that they're required to look into, right? But the city auditor's office has a broad mandate to be able to audit anything.
Yeah.
So I would say that the Inspector General just has a more specific mandate, and ours is a super broad mandate.
So it seems like there's a bit of redundancy when it comes to the auditing, and that you already have the infrastructure in place to do these audits. And we have to look out for redundancy as we're trying to right-size this ship and as we're trying to make the most out of the taxpayer dollars. And one of the things we might think about is, in going to the charter, where do we house the Inspector General? And is the Inspector General housed under the auditor? Something that we probably should think about.
Oh, and Council President Jenkins, I just want to say, if that were, and I think you alluded to it just now in your remarks, but if the Inspector General function were, if that were to happen, then they cannot report in any way to the Police Commission.
Councilmember Gallo and then Councilmember Houston.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the information. So based on the report that you gave us, contract with an outside agency to complete mandated recurring audits. I mean, these are audits that are required through the measures to be completed, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there another funding source that your staff is currently being compensated?
Currently not. We did propose that Fund 2270 be used to fund the audits of the vacant property tax, Measure W. Fund 2253 be used to cover the expenses of auditing the Measure Y, the Oakland Zoo. Fund 1780 for Measure D, the Kids First. Fund 2412 for Measure M, Emergency Medical Services. Fund 2250, Measure N, Paramedic Services. And Fund 2244, Measure Q, Parks Preservation, Litter Reduction, and Homelessness Services.
Thank you. And again, just for the record, these audits are required by the measures that the voter approves, right?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate the work you do, and certainly the information you provide us is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Houston.
Hello.
How are you doing?
All right.
Excuse me. One issue I've had in the past is that the hard work that your department does, there's no implementation of what you do. So let's think about it like this. Out of all the audits that's been happening in the last 5 years or 2 years or 3 years of what you can reflect on, how many have we just reacted to your suggestions?
I will say, and we just had, as part of the Measure X charter amendments, it became a requirement for our office to formally follow up on outstanding audit recommendations twice per year. We just presented our audit recommendation follow-up process in April to the Finance and Management Committee, and it was in the consent calendar in the council meeting on May 20th. We didn't present it to the full council, but we did actually have a lot more partially implemented audit recommendations in the latest audit recommendation follow-up cycle. So often it's interpreted when there's so many audit recommendations that we have, and many of them, and too many of the ones that are really important to many of us haven't been implemented. Many of them have been partially implemented. And a lot of them, just to fully admit, I mean, they're very costly, right? Like there was a question that was just asked about how much would it cost to replace Oracle? Like, you know what I mean? Like if they are very costly. Many of them require a lot of coordination. Some of the higher profile outstanding audit recommendations related to police overtime would actually require me to confer, right? So it's tricky. So I say that I want to give some kind of acknowledgement that there's been a lot of progress made, but you are right. We would like to see all of our audit recommendations implemented in haste, right?
Right, your department puts hours, and when I look at your audits, they're so detailed. So let me be specific. On the illegal dumping audit, was those recommendations put in place?
Well, we have not yet released that one, but we're working on it now.
Okay, so I'm gonna do like the president says, are you listening? I want people to be listening. So we're gonna implement those because that's the basic core services that we need, that we're fighting for public health and safety. It was another question I had, and that's it. And you're looking good, like always.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Houston. Did the city administrator want to chime in here?
Yes, through the chair. Councilmember Houston, thank you for that question. And I certainly want to acknowledge the audits that come out of Audits Houston. Since we've had an opportunity to work together, I just really appreciate the spirit of collaboration. And I think it is an important question that was just asked specific to what has been implemented, and I appreciate the report going back. One thing I also want to just appreciate is Auditor Houston and his team's willingness to help support with the implementation. I think going forward, how do we implement, because many of these recommendations have not, frankly, been implemented going back years. But perhaps there is that space as we talk about the budget implications of many of the audit recommendations that probably should be called out. If we want to implement, here's how much it's going to cost. We can do it as long as we pay for it. And so I think my staff, we've been trying to work as much as we can to implement what we can, given the time and resources that we have. But I think that's an important aspect. If there's a financial impact, and they all make very good sense, and they're very good audits going forward, it will help us down the line, but we just have to be mindful of how do we pay for it. So I think having that question in this context, talking about budget, is an important one, but I just couldn't miss the opportunity to just kind of highlight that, the need to call out the budget implications for many of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Councilmember Houston?
Through the chair, thank you, City Administrator. What do you need for your office? What do you need? You need more staffing? What do you need? What do you need? I want to know what you need.
We need staffing.
How much more staffing?
Well, in this presentation, we requested the unfreezing of a current performance auditor that is currently under recruitment. We had 116 applicants, but it's frozen. So we want that, right? We have a minimum staffing of 15, but the proposed budget puts us to 11.
Okay, we need to get him what he needs.
And I do have a question for you as well. So on that note, can you share that if the department is fully staffed, how will that impact the need for outside contracting that has been done to complete some of the audits?
Thank you for that question. We much prefer to use in-house staff on these audits. We could, like our proposal, just because we didn't have enough staff, that's why we proposed using an outside firm to do some of those recurring audits. But there's a certain level of detail that is not going to be achieved by outsourcing. For instance, our most recent audit of library services parcel taxes, right? A firm would have been able to just meet the requirements to make sure that the city contributed its minimum maintenance of effort, right? But we found things like exempt taxpayers were incorrectly billed and paid, right? That's not the kind of thing that you would find in an outsourced audit. If we did get our full staffing, we wouldn't need to contract out.
Councilmember Houston.
Okay, last thing. So if you're listening, council, budgeteers, I want Mr. Houston's staffing fully funded. I want him to have what he needs to get what he needs done. So if you're listening, that's what I want.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, no, this is a really important discussion, and I think we can all agree that we have relied on your reports and the fantastic work that your team does. I guess I'm wondering, is there something worthwhile, and maybe this is a question both to you and the administrator, in terms of having a position that really focuses just on implementation of the recommendations? Are there some past reports that, or audits that you have produced that you think are low-hanging fruit that we can start implementing within our city government, and just someone who can really focus on, I think it's called like change management or something in the private sector, right? Like really changing things, and whether you think that would be worthwhile. Thank you.
That's an interesting question, and I'll try not to be too geeky in my audit world. As far as us having a direct role in implementing the audit recommendations, we can't do that per government auditing standards. So, because then it's like we're auditing our own work. And the charter requires us to follow government auditing standards. We have to keep a healthy, independence just to do our work. However, I do want to shout out our staff members, like the executive assistant to the city auditor, has helped out tremendously on our new audit recommendation follow-up campaign, and we're trying to get more awareness around audit recommendation follow-up and try to make sure that people don't forget about our recommendations, right? And when I say people, I'm talking about the public, I'm talking about the city administration, department directors, as well as the city council members. So that's what we're doing internally, and also devoting enough time to really connect with the departments. I think they will testify to the fact that they hear from us at least twice a year in terms of the status of the recommendations. But any kind of like the real implementation has to occur from within the city administration.
I see, because you need a level of independence in order to carry out your job. Just to understand that, you need a firewall, essentially.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, colleagues. Does Councilmember Ramachandran have her hand up? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you.
No.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. And so at this time, I believe we've completed all of the presentations from departments. And I did want to give space and opportunity, kind of as noted in this agenda item, for council members to openly dialogue about some of their priorities. So there is space in this moment if anyone wanted to share out. Councilmember Houston.
I wanted to say thank you for putting this together. You did a great job. I'm proud to be working alongside of you, and I'll let the president speak. He wanted to say something.
Council President Jenkins.
Yeah, if someone's taking notes, $500,000 OPD illegal dumping enforcement, $3 million measure NN, administrative position in the office of the council president, a fully staffed auditor's office. Am I missing anything? Yeah, that's it for now. I'm sure there'll be more.
Through the chair, if I could, before you all state your priorities, if you can also submit them to be in the packet to be memorialized. Additionally, before you dismiss today, you'll need to. Are you planning to continue this item or submit a different item for your next budget meeting?
Thank you so much for the question. It is my understanding that Finance will be bringing an item at the next Rules Committee. That will be the budget resolution, which will come to the special council meeting on June the 11th. In addition, colleagues, I'm happy to share out the schedule for kind of upcoming. So June 11th will be the opportunity that the budget team will be uplifting amendments, and then the potential budget adoption day will be June the 17th.
Just a quick question, point of clarification. So I saw on the schedule that June 2nd is when the council president's amendments are due. Does that mean that those of us on the council president's budget team, we got to turn in our amendments Monday?
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that question.
Okay.
Councilmember Wong, we can discuss internally around some of those internal deadlines on our calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Got it.
Any other comments?
I do.
Councilmember Houston.
I wanted to, I agree with the president, Kevin Jenkins, on what he said, and I just wanted to bring one thing up that I felt that's very, very important, was the enforcement, the EEOs, the enforcement officers. Those officers, we need to get support for those officers, so they don't spend the time looking over the cameras. They out there actually doing the work, and they need to be trained for hazmat and OSHA training, because they're not only to protect them, so they can collect the data. The data, everybody knows data is very important, right? So they can collect the data to prosecute if we need to prosecute, because if the EEOs aren't trained, they'll go out there and just get the indicia for the address, right? They need to be trained to be able to see what's hazardous, what's contaminated, and document it, log it in, so when that individual is caught illegal dumping in our community, we can negotiate charges. You do this much cleanup on the streets, or we're gonna charge you with a felony, right? So the EEOs are a very essential part of deterring this illegal dumping that's costing us millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And another one I'd like to now that we have, these things are basic cores. It may seem small, but it's huge when you look at the big picture. When it comes to graffiti vandalism, it's a visual cue that's destroying our city. It costs our city multi-millions of dollars to remove every year, right? So if we use these live situations, the illegal dumping, the graffiti vandalism, and teach the unhoused and teach the justice impacted how to, let's say this, to back roll. You can't make a mistake getting rid of illegal graffiti vandalism. You can't make a mistake. How to color match, how to back roll, how to use the rigs to get rid of the graffiti vandalism. What you're actually doing is you're teaching them skill sets that they can go and become and work for the city of Oakland, because we only got one person that's actually removing the graffiti vandalism, right? We had 2, we had 3, we only have 1. Train them, and we're stopping recidivism. You know, use what's happening in our streets as a training program, right? To assist the unhoused and the justice impacted. Through the illegal dumping also, you could teach them how to bag, tag, stack, use the proper tools, how to use PPE. So that's another thing I like to talk about. Just simple things. My things are very simple, Chair. Very simple. Core services and embracing the justice impacted and the unhoused. And I have a lot more to say after that.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Houston. I know that over the last 2 days, we've had the opportunity to hear from multiple departments as they are also advocating for different things. And kind of on that note, I did just want to ask a question to the body that with some of these recommendations that you all are kind of uplifting, did you have any proposed funding sources that you've identified for any of the items that you've uplifted?
Yeah, so I know the council president budget team will be working very hard to figure out how to get this done.
And I also know that historically, outside of the council budget team, other council members can also bring forth their amendments as well to kind of help in the process. And so I'm really grateful for everyone's feedback. I know that everyone that is on the council budget team will be working, of course, around the clock to really try to ensure that we are prioritizing essential services for our residents. And so on that note, and so at this time, may I have a motion to approve the report?
So I will eventually make the motion, but I'm sure the council president's budget team will work hard on getting a 5th vote. Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Second.
On the motion by Council President, seconded by Councilmember Houston, to accept this report and recommendation, Councilmember Fife is excused. Councilmember Gallo is absent at this point. Councilmember Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramachandran?
Aye.
Councilmember Unger is excused. Council President Jenkins?
Aye.
And Chair Brown?
Aye.
Motion passes with a vote of 5. I'm sorry. Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Jenkins? And Chair Brown. Motion passes with a vote of 5 ayes.
Excellent, and our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.